Over the past few months, there's been a lot of talk about church buildings, mainly because for much of that time, Christians haven't been able to gather in them. Congregations have had to find ways to meet, pray, celebrate, and give thanks together without a physical address. We've gathered on Zoom. We've assembled virtually, watching material prepared for online use. And we've called and texted to check in with each other. In the wake of our adaptive measures, many have wondered why we need church buildings in the first place. In the absence of facilities formerly used to make gatherings possible, well, we've gotten on just fine. It hasn't stopped the church from being church. Is it possible that much of what we do can happen without a building? After all, say several, the church isn't a building. It's the people. And folk have, perhaps rightly so, condemned the cult of bricks, those more concerned with structures than with people. They point out that some buildings act like fortresses, shutting out the world. And they urge us to try to think about a church without walls, in the world, not isolated from it. Folk will know we are Christians by our love, not our edifices. But is it that simple? In today's gospel, we read that Jesus and his disciples arrived at the town of Caesarea Philippi, a new growth city with considerable history. It used to be called Paneas, named after the god Pan, whose shrines were part of the city's notable sights to see. It got the name we read in the New Testament from Herod the Great's son, Philip. His father had built a grand temple in the city made of shining white marble, dedicated to the emperor, Caesar. Standing at the edge of this city, with infrastructure emerging from the desert like the Las Vegas Strip, Jesus and his disciples encountered a culture exhibited in monuments, shrines, manicured parks, boulevards, and markets. This city's architecture said something. Ideas presented about what was valuable, who was important, and the destiny of humankind. And Jesus asked his disciples, "Where do you think I fit in all this? How do you reconcile what I'm saying, who I am, with history and these current circumstances?" Architecture is the expression of a city's soul. Architects, city planners, and builders at their best help society realize what is valuable. Our skylines are canvases, our streets manifestations of who we are. Buildings are ways for us to say something, and for buildings to say something to us. They aren't just containers for people. Instead, buildings are a testament to ideas, to beliefs. If all that was important to a city was providing a place to do stuff, we'd have nothing but concrete boxes, or whatever material suited the city's weather best. There'd be no need for anything else. In saying that Christians don't need buildings, folk may be right, technically. The same logic might say we don't need art, music, or poetry. All those things are superfluous. But I reckon for many listening today, this would be a horrible prospect. And I bet the adage, buildings are surplus to requirements for Christians, doesn't give solace to those who remain at home for whatever reason now, away from church buildings. Many miss them, and with good reason. When done well, a church building uses light and shadow, objects and space, sound and silence to make a statement, to proclaim with Peter that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of the living God. It is on this statement that the church is built. It is on this statement that the church is literally built. As best as we can as human beings, we fashioned materials of this earth to express that. Our buildings aren't just places to meet. They are witnesses to and places to engage with what we believe is true. Now, at this point, some must be thinking, how in the world did we get here from today's gospel? This seems like a tangent. But today's gospel is about public declaration, about identifying what's true and most important among a sea of options. Yes, we as Christians do that by our words and by our deeds, but we also do it in our expressions of art. And I don't think we should diminish the importance of the shared sphere of cityscapes and village squares. Here, we have something to declare too. Am I saying that buildings are our priority, that we must preserve churches at any cost? Certainly not. Christians don't need buildings. We don't need a lot of things. However, buildings, insofar as they are a part of a cultural language, might need Christian voices. Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" For centuries, humans have answered this in paint and marble, brick, wood, and even rubble. Even in a pandemic, perhaps these things still have something to say.